Coming out there, and today's talk will be in English. It is my honor to welcome and introduce a distinguished guest, who's not just a guest, but also family. Rabbi Shmuley, who is a internationally renowned speaker, author, and public intellectual, often referred to as America's Rabbi. He has written numerous best-selling books on relationships, Judaism, spirituality, and contemporary culture, and has appeared frequently in international media. Beyond his scholarship and writing, Rabbi has dedicated his life to making Jewish wisdom accessible and relevant to people of all backgrounds. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Jakob, bitte meine Entschuldigung. Auf Deutsch? Dürfen die jemand?
No.
Nachher können wir übersetzen in Deutsch.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Gittler, and it's a pleasure to be here in Freiburg. I did not expect to be in Freiburg, so I'm even surprised myself. But to have such a nice crowd come out to hear me is truly something that will be very memorable. Let me begin by telling Rabbi Gittler and Rebbe Gittler, Yankee and Chava, that to be shluchim of Lubavitcher Rebbe here in a university town like Freiburg in Germany is not the easiest Chabad emissaryship. Firstly, I was a Chabad emissary on campus at Oxford University for 11 years with my wife Debbie, 11 years. We were one of the first people to go to campus when it was something brand new for the Rebbe to send people on campus. In fact, the first Chabad house ever was on campus. That was Rabbi Shlomo Kunin, UCLA in Westwood, California. But when we were in Western Europe at Oxford University for 11 years, it was still nowhere near as challenging as it is now. Even back then, the hatred toward Israel was just beginning. It was 1988. Yasser Arafat had just officially recognized the state of Israel because the Secretary of State of the United States at the time, under President Ronald Reagan, was George Shultz, a good man who passed away about 3 or 4 years ago. And he told Arafat, you're not coming to the U.S. even for a UN General Assembly, which is taking place in another 10 days, the UNGA, unless you recognize the state of Israel. So Arafat was forced to recognize Israel, at least in words. He would later call the first intifada, second intifada, blow 1,000 Jews to smithereens on buses, but at least he officially recognized the state of Israel. What that meant for us on campus, though, was that suddenly the PLO, which was treated as a terrorist organization, was now allowed to come to Western campuses. So as soon as I arrived, we had Bassem Abu Sharif. He was Arafat's chief aide, chief advisor, speaking at the Oxford Union, and the lies already started. This is the beginning of 1989, January 1989, at the Oxford Union. I started hearing all these lies from spokespeople who would say that Israel is a murderous state, a genocidal state, a Nazi state. And that was back in 1988, 1989. Fast forward to Rabbi Rebbe Gittler here in Freiburg, Germany in the year 2025, and the situation has deteriorated so greatly that it's utterly incomparable. I mean, who would have thought that in the country of Germany especially, where right now we are commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Holocaust, this year, 2025, 80 years since 1945, who would have thought that we would be seeing all over Germany, and all over France, and all over Belgium, and all over England, and all over Italy, giant demonstrations about free Palestine, which is the new Heil Hitler. It's a new way of basically calling for the annihilation of the Jewish people. It doesn't really differ because Hamas's objectives are exactly the same as the Nazis. But who would have thought that we would have to endure that in the year 2025? Who would have thought that things would get worse? So the first thing I want to do is just acknowledge that this is not an easy shlichus, that it's very impressive that you guys are here. It's the main reason I actually wanted to come, to support your work, and to say thank you, and to deliver my personal regards from both my son-in-law, your brother who looks like your twin, Rabbi Moshe Gittler, my son-in-law, and your sister-in-law, Rebbetzin Shana Gittler, who's my daughter, and their beautiful 3 children, Baruch Hashem. One of whom, the middle one, is named after my father, Yoav. We call him Yoavi, Yabi. But they have beautiful Chaya, who's named after your grandmother, because she was born under... my granddaughter, Chaya Gittler, Chaya Rasha Gittler, was born on the exact same day, not the yahrzeit, the exact same day that his grandmother passed away. Hours after she passed away. It's sad and beautiful at the same time. Tragic and miraculous at the same time. The second child, Yoav, is named after my father. And the third, Mendel Tzvi, was just born, is named after, obviously, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but the name Tzvi is Rabbi Tzvi Kogan. My son-in-law and my daughter, Rabbi Gittler's brother, named their child after a man they had never met. Rabbi Tzvi Kogan was a Chabad rabbi who lived in Dubai and was murdered by Iranian agents. What was that now? About a year ago. He was killed for just selling kosher food. He didn't hurt anybody. I met him when I was in Dubai. On the way here, we were walking right now. I was just speaking to the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates, and I'm grateful to the UAE and Dubai for their friendship with Israel and the Jewish people, even amidst all of the lies that have been told about the Jewish people and Israel, Jewish people in general, Israel in particular, since October 7th. But they named their baby after Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, because we're living in a time again of Jewish martyrdom. So the first thing is, thank you. You both represent the best of Chabad, the best of Judaism's willingness to stand up and be counted and look Jewish. Today, I get stopped all over Europe, thank God. Sometimes, thank God. Sometimes, please don't recognize me. I get stopped by 2 different kinds of people. The first half are people who are very nice to my wife and I. Like someone stopped us today in Colmar. A guy says, Rabbi Shmuley. And you never know they're Jewish. And this guy's an Orthodox Jew from Antwerp. Now, why do you never know they're Jewish? Because nobody looks Jewish. Because nobody wears yarmulke. They have disappeared from Europe completely. A yarmulke has become, God forbid, the equivalent of a yellow star. It's like almost a badge of shame or fear. Jews are afraid to identify Jewishly. Forget a Magen David. Then I get stopped by a lot of Israelis who don't speak Hebrew to each other. And it's pretty funny because the Hebrew accent is very, very identifiable. It's like so we meet 3 young Israeli women who IDF soldiers who were just released from the war, and they're in combat. So about 20% of female soldiers in the IDF are actually full combat. And these were 3 of them, fighters. But they were speaking to each other in a broken English. And they came over to me and they said, we recognize you. I said, where are you from? They said, we're from Belarus. I said, you're from Belarus the way that I'm from Mars, okay? The way I'm from Neptune. And they admitted a minute later, you can't make this up, that they're Israeli, but they were told, don't speak Hebrew in Germany or in France. So I said, let me get this straight. You just fought Hamas in Gaza. You just fought Hezbollah in Lebanon. You just fought the Houthis in Yemen. But you're afraid of the guy selling gelato, in Basel. I mean, the juxtaposition of Jewish bravery on the one hand and Jewish cowardice on the other is something very painful. But that's one kind of group, and that's nice. Last night, in Colmar again, I was sitting, just working on 2 steps, working on my phone, and this man walks over to me, American, very strong American accent. He says, you're Rabbi Shmuley. I said, it depends. I said, if you came over to say, free Palestine, river to the sea, no, my name is Mahmoud ibn al-Salam al-Faisal al-Jihad. But if you came over to say, and by the way, I want to be clear, I love my Muslim brothers and sisters, and I mean that with all my heart. I fight for Islam, and I fight against Islamophobia. but I despise my Islamist brothers and sisters. Islam is a great world religion. It fears God. It has many similarities to Judaism, kosher, halal. We have a written Torah. They have the Quran. We have an oral Torah, Mishnah, Gemara. They have an oral Torah, the Hadith. There's a lot of similarities. But the Islamists they're not religious at all. They're complete frauds. It's a political ideology that is basically Nazism that disguises itself fraudulently under Islam and is a great disgrace to Islam. It would be the equivalent of these SS soldiers who called themselves Catholics, who burnt all the shuls down on Kristallnacht on November 9th, 1938, or God forbid, put in the Zyklon B capsules into Majdanek, or Gross-Rosen, or Bergen-Belsen, or Auschwitz-Birkenau, etc., etc. So the second kind of group of people who walk over to... this American walked over, and his wife's not Jewish, and she couldn't have been nicer, and she said, he came over to say hello. I said, let me meet your wife. I walk over. I said, why didn't you come to say hello as well? She said, we love your work. We follow you, everything you do from California, but I'm not Jewish. And I thought that would upset you. I said, you thought that would upset me? A non-Jewish lover of Israel and Jewish people, you thought that would upset me? I said, I'll tell you what upsets me. What upsets me is what happened to me in Vienna. Did anyone see what happened to me in Vienna 2 weeks ago? It was Erev Shabbat, 1 hour before Shabbat. My wife and I were walking in Stefanplatz, which is the epicenter, ground zero of Vienna, right outside the St. Stephen's Cathedral. You know, the very heart of Vienna, when a group of Islamists, again, not Muslims, my brothers, Islamists, my enemies, came over and violently assaulted me. They recognized me as a fighter for Israel, as a fighter against anti-Semitism. They kicked me, they humiliated me, they knocked off my yarmulke, they pulled my tzitzis to tear my tzitzis, they tore my shirt. And then, thank God, I was rescued by the Vienna police. That was a joke, by the way, and you should laugh very heartily. Because I was surrounded immediately by 10 Austrian police who made me feel like I was the instigator of this. And they took us to the police station, and I had to spend Shabbat, Friday night, in the police station, giving a statement, trying to convince them that actually I did do something wrong. I admit it. It was my fault that I was attacked by this group of Islamists. There were like 10 of them attacked me. There were probably 200 if you see the video. And they were, from the river to the sea, which is a call for genocide. It's a call for another Holocaust. Palestine will be free of all Jews. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stop fighting with you guys. I said, you're right. I told the Vienna police, I'm guilty. I did do something wrong. I was born a Jew. And I apologize. If I could have been born a Swede, if I could have been born Maori in New Zealand, if I could have been born an Aboriginal in Australia, maybe I would have made that choice. But no one gave me a choice. I apologize for being a Jew. And obviously, none of that is accurate. I could not be more proud of being Jewish, and I will never hide my Jewishness. And I will never deny my Jewishness. But it was a way of mocking their stupidity. You don't know why I was attacked? Seriously? My friends, why is all this happening? What's the reason for anti-Semitism? And more importantly, if we can identify a reason, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? So first, let me just tell you what we've been doing, my wife Debbie and I have been doing the past few weeks. So I've written 36 books, thank God, Baruch Hashem. Do not be that impressed. Many have sold 36 copies. You should laugh at that. I know Germany is not famous for its humor. But no one will kick you out if you laugh, I promise. Right, Rabbi Gittler? No one will be evicted if they chuckle a little bit? It's not forbidden here in Chabad in Freiburg?
It's not Germany.
Oh, it's Chabad, exactly. So then you can laugh. Then you can laugh. And the Rebbe loved laughter, right? The Rebbe got people to whistle, all the Rebbe loved joy. The Rebbe loved
to laugh to live.
Okay. What my wife and I have been doing the past year, I've written 36 books. And I wrote a major book on the Holocaust that took me 10 years to research and write. And it's called Holocaust Holiday, where I took my children as their summer holiday to 100 Holocaust sites in Poland, the Czech Republic, Italy, France, of course Germany, etc., etc. But I want to write a book now. I'm writing a book now on the First and Second Crusade and the massacre of European Jews after 1349. So just the brief history, I'm sure you know a lot of it because it surrounds you where we are, in Alsace, in right by the Black Forest. By the way, I was really amazed. In German, the Black Forest is Schwarzwald. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Schwarzwald. That just doesn't sound right. I would not say that in America, to be perfect. I think Germany's had a government with it. I think they got to change that one. Okay, so we're on the edge of the Black Forest, correct? In these areas along the Rhine River and the Main River, but especially the Rhine River, what we Americans call Rhineland. What do Germans call the area, the Rhine River Valley? What's it called in German? What?
It's the same. Rhineland.
Rhineland. Oh my God, that was easy. Okay. So Rhineland is arguably, with the exception of the Holocaust, the most tragic place on earth for Jews. There is no place that's worse. More Jews died in the Rhineland than in any other period of Jewish history up until the Holocaust. Up until Poland probably superseded it. 3 million Jews died in Poland. Again, it was the Germans who committed the slaughter, but it wasn't on German soil. Most of the Jews of Germany were also murdered, but 3 million. But before that, you have to come back to the Rhineland and areas like this, Alsace, to understand the magnitude of the horrors that were faced by the Jewish people. So the history is pretty straightforward. In the year 1095, the Pope Urban II in France preached the First Crusade. He wanted all the Christians to go to Jerusalem and wrest control of the holy city from the infidels. Who were the infidels? The Muslims, not the Jews. But as these Christian armies began to congregate in France and Germany primarily, and as German barons and dukes decided that they would mortgage their vineyards, their properties, their castles, to have money to raise armies, because this was a ragtag, two things happened. The first is that the People's Crusade, led by Peter the Hermit, they decided, wait a second, why are we going all the way to Israel to kill a bunch of infidels? What about all these damn infidel Jews who are my next door neighbors? Let's kill them too. And they began to force baptize Jews in the Rhine. That was a way, really, of course, drowning them. Very few survived the force, because Jews will never give up their Judaism. They'd rather die. Forced baptism, burning at the stake. All the cities around you, Colmar, where we were today, 600 Jews burnt at the stake. Burnt to death in Colmar. Basel, where the rabbi's children go to school, Baruch Hashem. They took 2,000 Jews in Basel and put them on an island, and they burnt them alive. But we're ahead of ourselves, because that was in 1349. We're still at the First Crusade. So in 1096 to 1098, these Christian crusader marauders, in the name of God, in the name of piety, in the name of, just like someone who screams Allahu Akbar today, again, not my righteous Muslims, but Islamists, who scream, in the name of God, I'm going to kill you Jews. They were screaming Allahu Akbar October 7th. That's what they did in the First Crusade. Very similar. They disemboweled women, they raped the women, they cut people's heads off, they burned them alive, just like October 7th, but on a much larger scale, because there was no IDF to stop them. That happened 2 years. They annihilated all the Jews of Germany and France. You're talking 90% were killed. By the way, in the Holocaust, only 4 countries experienced 90% extinction. Only 4 countries did they kill 90% of Jews. You know what those 4 countries are? Help me here. Number 1, Poland, of course. There were 3.3 million Jews, 3 million were killed. Germany's interesting. I'll get back to that in a second. What's the second one? Holland. Holland is so liberal. They're so liberal. Marijuana is legal, and women can sit in red triangles, squares in the red light district, because we're so open-minded and we're so liberal. It turns out, when it came to hiding their Jews or protecting their Jews, they weren't so liberal. 90% of all Dutch Jews were murdered. Anne Frank herself was turned in by someone Dutch, because there was a bounty. The Gestapo gave you money for every Jew you turned in. So, first country they killed 90%, Poland. Second country they killed 90%, Holland, which is just shocking but true. Holland is trying to deny it. They're trying to say it was only 75%. It was 90%. But even 75%, we only killed 75% of our Jews, wasn't it? Third country that they killed 90%? Greece.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
And especially Thessalonica. And only now Thessalonica is finally getting a Holocaust museum. Greece. And the fourth? Norway. Now, what about Germany? Germany's harder. Germany was completely Judenrein. Germany probably we don't, about 50% of all German Jews were murdered, but that's only because they had 1933 to 1939 to get out. If someone would take them, they knew who Hitler was. So a lot left. There was one problem. There was nowhere to go. They couldn't even go to America. I'm American. Rabbi Gittler's American. I love being American. I love the United States of America. It's the freest, greatest nation in the world, Israel's greatest friend. And I want to thank President Trump specifically, whatever people think about him in Europe for his friendship with Israel and the Jewish people. But and America defeated Hitler with Britain. But when it came to taking in Jews, they were catastrophic. Because Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who defeated Hitler and deserves our thanks, had an anti-Semitic head of the visa section in the State Department. His name was Breckinridge Long. He was a disgusting, vile anti-Semite, and I hope he rots in frickin' hell till today, because he only allowed, in all the 12 years of the Holocaust, he only allowed 90,000 Jews to come into the United States in all 12 years of the Holocaust. More people have just crossed into the United States illegally during that sentence that I just said than the 90,000 who got in, Jews who came in legally during the war. By the way, one was to feed the Rebbe, for example, and the Rebbe himself. The Rebbe enters, the Rebbe gets out. The Rebbe lived in, just a little aside for my Chabad partners here, the Rebbe went from Paris south to Vichy, lived in Vichy, which was the collaborationist government of the French. The Rebbe lived across the street from Marshal Philippe Pétain, the disgusting Nazi collaborator, lived directly across the street. Davened in the shul there, which they revere till today. The Chabad shul still exists. And then the Rebbe, thank God, got out on the last boat leaving Lisbon, Portugal. So the Rebbe was one of the 90,000. But the Jews died because there was nowhere to go. But German Jews knew who Hitler was, so thank God about half got out and half were murdered. So it wasn't 90%, but it was all Unirun. And here's my point. There were 3 Holocausts in Germany, not one. First Holocaust was the First Crusade, when they killed nearly every Jew in Germany. And the parts of Germany France, Alsace is constantly changing between Germany and France, etc. But they killed everyone. 95% extinction. 95%. Then the Jews came back because they were experts in business, commerce. They weren't allowed to own land. So they had to do a lot of money lending. By the way, a lot of these disgusting crusader lords, the reason they killed Jews also was just for their property. The Jews were lending their money for the Crusades, and they were mortgaging their homes, and then they would just go and kill their money lenders. And I love the way the world hates us Jews for being bankers. You Jews are only interested in money. Yeah, you tell people they can't own land, they can't farm, they can't grow corn, they can't grow wheat, and the only thing you leave them is that they can lend money, and then you blame them for that. But that's typical. We always blame the victim when it comes to anti-Semitism. It's always our fault. Then you have a second Holocaust, because of the Second Crusade, and that takes place between 1244 and 1246. And again, the Crusaders come and they kill every Jew in Germany. I mean, look, you're not talking a pogrom like in Russia. You're not talking even a Kristallnacht. You're talking Holocaust. Every Jew was killed again in 1244 to 1246. The numbers are staggering, and Germany is made Judenrein. But then the Jews came back a third time, 100 years later. Now we're at 1348 and 1349. Terrible plague is sweeping all through Europe. The Black Death, the bubonic plague. Who's responsible? And by the way, the word boo-boo that little kids use, I have a boo-boo, that comes from the Black Death. The buboes, these big black boils that were on your arms. And who was the cause of it, according to all the Christians of Europe? Help me here.
The Jews?
Of course it was the Jews. And how did they kill all the Christians? They poisoned the wells. And how do you respond to that? Well, you kill all the Jews. Third Holocaust. Again, total annihilation. I'm not talking a pogrom. I'm not talking like Fiddler on the Roof, where the Russian Tsar, Bloody Nicholas, wants to show the Jews who's really the boss, or he wants to let some drunken Cossacks have their fun and kill 100, 200. I'm talking killing everybody. So by the time we get to Hitler, and the Holocaust, I think we can say starts, there was the Nuremberg laws, but I think the Holocaust we can say starts on the 9th of November 1938 on Kristallnacht. And it lasts really until May of 1945. You know that Peter Van Pels was, there were 8 people who were with Anne Frank. with Anne Frank, 8 in total that were hidden in the secret annex. There was a 15-year-old boy she had a crush on. He appears all over the diary. His name was Peter Van Pels. Do you know that he died May 10th, 1945? The war ended May 8th. Talk about a tragedy. He died 2 days after all the fighting ended. Even Anne Frank died 1 month before the war was over. By the time we get to the Holocaust of 1938 to 1945, that is the third Holocaust, total extinction, total annihilation, total extermination of German Jewry on this soil. That's pretty rough. And that's what my book is about. The Holocaust is a misconception. The Holocaust, the annihilation of European Jewry, a continent-wide Holocaust, that was truly unique because Hitler conquered the Czech Republic and Greece and Norway, and there were only 2 or 3 countries that were spared because they were neutral: Spain, Switzerland, Sweden. But everyone else was killed. That was unique. But in terms of Germany and France, it happened 3 times. Why? Why do they hate us so much? And all the reasons we hear have to be wrong. First, they say they hate us because you Jews are such weaklings. You don't know how to stand up for yourselves. During the Holocaust, you were like sheep to the slaughter. You just walked into the gas chambers. Okay, really? Oh, you hate us for that reason? We'll build an army. We'll build an army called the IDF. We'll have the best air force in all of the Middle East. We'll take out all of Iran's air defenses. In 12 days, a country... I could fit Israel onto this chair, okay? Israel's this big. You hate us because we're so weak, we're so pathetic? So we'll build a strong Israel. The IDF is the second strongest military on planet Earth, if you can only believe that. God Almighty. Russia cannot defeat Ukraine. Putin can't beat frickin' Ukraine. But Israel destroyed 6 armies in 2 years. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, Yudan Shmuley, moderate, Mahmoud Abbas, he's moderate. And then the Houthis in Yemen. Israel just wiped out their entire cabinet 2 days ago. And then suddenly, so we hate you Jews because you're weak. Oh, well, so we'll be strong and defend ourselves. You disgusting Jews. You're too strong. You're too powerful. Okay, so it can't be that we're too weak. What about what they say? I'll tell you why we hate you Jews. We hate you Jews because you killed Jesus. You killed Jesus. You killed God. How does that explain why Muslims hate us? They're not Christian. How does that explain why atheists hate us? They don't even believe Jesus ever existed. Or agnostics. Or Hindus. Or Buddhists. Aside from the fact, I wrote a whole book called Kosher Jesus, which shows, based on Christian scripture, that the Romans killed Jesus with no help for the Jews whatsoever. But that's an entire different speech. It will take a long time. It's very interesting, actually, but it took some time. Okay, well, there's another reason we hate you Jews. Next time. There's another reason we hate you Jews. We hate you Jews because you took the Palestinians' land. You're thieves. We have nothing against you, you're just thieves. And that's pretty funny when you think that... I mean, there's 1,000 ways to respond to this one. I'm going to choose just 2 of the 1,000. When you think that California, Arizona, New Mexico, I could go on, was all part of Mexico, and the United States took it in a war that everyone agrees was forced under President Polk, James K. Polk. The Mexican-American War was just a war of conquest. But that's a great country, a democratic country, let alone every other country. No one had any issue with Yudan Shimon when it was occupied by Jordan between remember, the history's simple. 1947, the UN votes to split Israel in two. Give the Palestinians. Good. Palestinians reject it. 6 Arab armies attack Israel. And who conquers Judea and Samaria, the West Bank? Who conquers Gaza? Not the Palestinians. There were no Palestinians at the time. Everyone was called Palestinians. The Jews were called Palestinians. People that conquered it were, Gaza was conquered by whom? Egypt. No occupation. They had nothing to do with Gaza. And who, of course, conquered Judea and Samaria, the West Bank? Jordan. And that wasn't an occupation. So that's all crap. But what I always tell people when they say to me, but you Jews are usurpers. You came from Europe. Hitler killed you. We feel so bad. But why'd you take the Palestinians' land? I always say to them, and what are you? Well, I'm a Christian. Okay. And I said, it's interesting because I am actually one of the Jews who loves reading Christian scripture. I know a lot of the New Testament even by heart. The book of Matthew, the book of Luke, the book of Mark, the book of John, the book of Hebrews, Ephesians, Corinthians, Revelation. I said, here it is, in fact. Here's the book. I just want you to find one thing for me. Just the word Arab. Once. Or Palestinian. Just once. This is your holy book, not mine. There's only 3 groups in the Christian Bible, the New Testament. There's Jews, there's Romans, who are the occupiers, right? The European occupiers, and then the third one is the Samaritans. That's it. I said, so what do you mean we stole your land? So at least take your book and throw it in the garbage. Because it's false history. Jesus was a Palestinian, right? I mean, that's the way he was dressed up in the manger outside of St. Peter's Cathedral in St. Peter's Square by Pope Francis, may God rest his soul. They actually put a keffiyeh on him. The Catholic Church, Jesus was a Palestinian. So then take the whole New Testament and throw it in the garbage. Like any false history. So it can't be that we took someone else's land. I'm going to give you guys, if you don't mind, 2 minutes. Help me understand. Why do they hate us? Oh, we forgot to say jealousy. They're jealous of us because we're so rich. I always laugh at that one. Jews were the poorest nation on earth for 2,000 years. Slaughtered, murdered, killed, thrown into ghettos. Does Tevye the milkman look to you like Mark Zuckerberg? We've only had money since the Second World War, where we came to the New World and we made a couple of bucks. In Germany, in France, in the United States, probably the most, thank God. Firstly, not all Jews are rich, that's for sure, but even if that were the case, the only rich Jews in Europe for 2,000 years, this is why everyone uses their name until today, all the anti-Semites, as part of the conspiracy theories, were like 3 families, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Montagues. That was about it. 3 families. So we were dirt poor, so that can't be the reason. So help me. Why do they hate us?
First reason is perhaps our religion is a closed club, and they don't understand what's inside.
Okay, so it's out of ignorance?
Of course.
And a sense of our superiority that we don't let people in?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one thing, only one.
Yeah, but I could again refute that in a second. Why don't they hate the Amish? The Amish are more closed and they're more exclusive. Why aren't they gassing the Amish all over the world? Why aren't they gassing the Jains? I barely even understand the Jain religion. I've tried to.
Because the Jews reach such a lot of success.
Now you're back to the envy thing.
Of
Now,
course.
now you've left the exclusive club thing and you're back to the envy thing.
No, not left, but added to. These things go together.
Okay.
Because a closed club is ignorance, you don't know what's going on inside. And envy, because something's going on so special that there are so many of them are so successful.
Okay, so forgive me, but I can, again, undermine that argument in an instant. It's very simple. Who did Hitler most hate in the Holocaust? Who did the Nazis most target? Assimilated Jews. Jews who were not part of any exclusive club. Jews who didn't even want to be known as Jewish. Jews who had changed their names, often married outside of the community. A lot of them were baptized as Christians. They were not part of any exclusive club. Hitler hated them the most. Hitler rarely railed against Hasidic Jews with beards. He railed against the assimilated Jews who were taking over German culture, who joined the mainstream.
Maybe he was afraid of them as agents of the world. Judaism.
But that doesn't explain anything. You're quoting a conspiracy theory without giving us the reasons for the conspiracy in the first place. You're saying, yes, it's a conspiracy against the Jews. I get it, but what's the reason for the conspiracy? Anyone else?
Irrational.
What?
It's irrational.
That's an interesting answer.
You try to
I
find
think that is the
You
prevailing.
try to find the reason, you will know.
That is the prevailing belief today.
Well,
That it's almost mystical. Elie Wiesel,
No,
the
no.
most famous survivor of the Holocaust, and my mentor and dear friend, whom I missed, who passed away on the 2nd of July, 2016. Next summer will be the 10th anniversary of his yahrzeit. The Hebrew yahrzeit is Chaf Sivan. He passed away. He said that to me in one of the last speeches he gave while he was alive. We shared a platform at NYU, New York University, that was arranged by my son Mendy, who, God bless him, is a very brave IDF soldier now, and a speechwriter for the head of the Knesset, Amir Ohana. Mendy organized this big event, and Elie Wiesel, you can watch it. When we finish tonight, you can watch it on YouTube. Elie Wiesel turned to me and said to me, Halacha hi shesona esav Yaakov. It is an axiom of nature. It's a mystical law of nature that the non-Jews hate us. And I was very surprised to hear that, because here was a Jew who was loved by the non-Jews. He got the Nobel Peace Prize. He was given the Legion of Honor by France. His books are taught all over Germany, all over the world. But he was saying that they hate us mystically, as you said, inexplicably, mysteriously. And when I challenged him on it and said, surely there are non-Jews who love us, he said to me, Halacha biyadua. The Talmud does not say, that he's quoting the Talmud, the Talmud does not say that it is a law of nature that the non-Jews hate us. He quoted it even much further. Halacha biyadua, it is an undeniable fact of nature that the non-Jews hate us. But I can't accept that. And it was the only time, there were only 2 times in my life that I disagreed with Elie Wiesel. One of the greatest Jews that ever lived. One of the greatest human beings that ever lived. But that was one of the times. I'll tell you why I don't believe it.
The jealousy part does make sense in the sense of that we are the chosen nation. God
Okay.
chose us as.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're saying not jealousy for our money, but jealousy for... Okay, I'll get back to that in just one second. But let me just first deal with this. You know why I don't believe that? First of all, it's too convenient. Now, if Israel has terrible public relations in explaining its war against Hamas, for example... And by the way, I hate the word hasbara. Hasbara means to explain yourself. We don't have to explain why we deserve to live. I hate the word hasbara. I believe in attacking our enemies factually to show their hypocrisy and their ignorance. I believe in attack, always attack. But it's still public relations. It's just not defensive public relations. It's offensive public relations. I'm never on defense. I don't have to explain why, as a Jew, I deserve to live. No other nation is expected to, and neither should we. But the reason why I don't accept that the non-Jews hate us is the only real friend the Jewish people have today is a country called, Israel has, is a country called the United States of America. The EU is not our friend. Australia, my wife's country, it's become a disgusting sewer of anti-Semitism. That's the most shocking of all, by the way, because it had no history of anti-Semitism. Australia is such a disappointment, and God bless Bibi Netanyahu for calling out that weakling, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and calling him a weak leader. I love that. Not very diplomatic, but this is not a time for diplomacy. This is a time for truth and candor. The reason why I don't accept that the non-Jews hate us organically, in their DNA, congenitally, from birth, from the womb, is that the only reason that America is so pro-Israel is because, primarily I should say, not the only, but primarily, it's because of 80 million born-again Christians, Christian evangelicals who love the Jewish people and love Israel. You take away those 80 million who usually vote as a bloc and are the reason that Trump won the election, and Israel has very little support. I don't believe that we should have the Republicans over the Democrats. I wanted both parties to support Israel. That was always the case. Sadly, it's really changing. It's kind of like in Britain. The Labour Party always supported Israel. The Conservative Party supported Israel. Then they had Jeremy Corbyn, a disgusting, vile Hamas lover, dyed-in-the-wool anti-Semite, and then we lost the Labour Party. Now we have Keir Starmer, whose wife is a proud Jew. And his kids, they have Shabbat dinner. But on Israel, he's a pig. He's a weakling. And that's what's happening to us in America. It's really sad. Why does Trump... I think Trump has a very deep attachment to the Jewish people anyway, because of his daughter Ivanka, his Jewish grandchildren. I think it even from his father. Again, different lecture. But the biggest reason is that his base, the MAGA base, are evangelical Christians who are more pro-Israel than American Jewry are. So I can't accept that they're non-Jews haters. I can't accept it. Yesterday, for those of you who follow me on social media, for those of you who follow me on social media, you don't know how lucky you are. For those of you who don't follow me, you don't know how unlucky you are. And how vacuous and empty your life really is. Yesterday in Basel, a non-Jewish woman just walked over to me and said, "Are you Rabbi Shmuley?" Again, is it Fried Palestine? And she's a non-Jewish Swiss woman who just loves Israel, loves the Jewish people, and told me she wants to convert. If any of you saw the video. I meet many people like that. So we're back to the initial question. Why do they hate us? So Representative Chabas said, well, the reason is that they are jealous. They're not jealous of our money, which we didn't have until recently. And again, let's stop this lie that all Jews are rich. Tell a lie! But they're jealous of us being the chosen people. But there's also a problem with that. As my friend Dennis Prager once pointed out, and he's ill right now, we should have a refuah shlema on covering. A lot of people, a lot of nations claim to be the chosen people. The Japanese have a sun, a rising sun on their flag. You know why? They believe the sun rises for them. They're chosen. What is the famous anthem? Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britain believes that they're chosen to rule the whole world, and they colonized 1/4 of the Earth's surface. And that was even after losing the American 13 colonies. That was the incredible thing. They lost all of America, and they still, after that, they conquered 1/4 of the Earth. They think they're chosen. Muslims think they're chosen. Christians think they're chosen. The only ones that are going to be saved. A lot of people claim to be chosen. Now you might say to me, we're the only ones that people actually kind of believe it.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. But the idea of being chosen is
Maybe it's not because,
one that many claim. Sorry.
maybe it's because no matter what happens, Judaism always persists. Like,
Oh, that we're indestructible, like cockroaches. That's the way. You know, it's funny because that's what all the anti-Semites who hate my guts, who attack me. I wake up every morning to 1,000 death threats, and more than anything, they call us cockroaches and insects just because they can't kill us.
It's a love that we have to each other, and it's very strong and special. And it's
That's interesting.
because for instance, like with the war now, Israelis are coming back because of the war. Where is it? Where can you see it? When there's a war, the people come back and there are planes full of Israelis coming back to help.
Okay, I like that explanation, but unfortunately, would it were that it were true? Because we are a close community, but unfortunately, there's a lot of traitors in our community as well. Bernie Sanders is one of the most famous Jews in the world, and he's an Israel hater. And I was very close to his brother, Larry, who's a very good man. He used to eat Shabbat dinner in my house in Oxford all the time. Bernie's older brother. But Bernie is...
But it's the so-called Jews.
But I can go through one by one of Jews who are traitors to the Jewish people, who are not part of that community. Is it true, they say, 70% of Jews in New York voted for Zoran Mamdani to become the mayor of New York City? Do you understand what that means? Do you know how vile and reptilian Mamdani is going to be? He almost certainly is going to be the mayor of New York. New York has more Jews in it than any city in the history of the world. More than Tel Aviv, more than Jerusalem, more than any city, more than Berlin, more than Warsaw, more than any. And this anti-Semite is going to become, and he's voted for by how? I think what you mean is, the Jewish people are my people, all of them. including Bernie Sanders, including the Jews who voted for Mandana. Okay, but I think there's really, again, this is a different conversation. I don't want to get off the tangents because I know we're limited on time. We only have, Rabbi Gittler told me we must finish by 3:30 a.m. And that only gives us another 5 hours. And I'm going to struggle just to finish by then. So,
Rabbi, you told me 1 a.m. You're lying.
April Fools.
No. I am going to show up at 3:30 for part 1. And then we'll have a 20-minute break, like Shavuos night, right? And then we'll just go to part 2. Okay. Okay, so
Yes.
It's Ahavat Israel, and it's our love is stronger than your hate. It's all that, what we now put all everywhere, our stickers. I mean, of course we are.
where are these stickers?
But this is the
all I
damage.
see all over Europe is
But this is
I see
King
Free
Am.
Palestine, I see F Israel. I've seen one or two. My wife and I were so surprised to see something, Free the Hostages. We saw it once, and I made such a big deal out of it. It was in some German city. I wish that were true. I think
Okay, I show you immediately the photo that I just made before I came by tram.
Where was that? That's nice.
This is here in Freiburg,
Wow, beautiful.
and I didn't put it. Usually I put these things.
Let me just show everyone that.
What's that?
I want all the American Jews who are watching. This is live. I want
Okay.
all the American Jews who are watching live to know that Baruch Hashem. By the way, can you just check with Johnny that we actually are working? You can't because. I want everyone to see this. I want all the American Jews to watch. It is not true that there's terrible anti-Semitism in Europe. Baruch Hashem, in all of Europe, Italy, Greece, Albania, Bulgaria, England, Holland, Baruch Hashem, we found one sticker.
לא נכון.
כן נכון.
We found a single sticker. No, I'm kidding. I'm not really. That's nice. So thank God, we are only up in terms of Free Palestine stickers to free the hostages, we are only outnumbered 700 gazillion, 698 bazillion, 988 million, 765 billion, 285 million to 1. So we're on the map. We are on the map. But all it takes is one, right? To answer you, I agree with you. We're very close to it. But I think the Jewish community is sadly splitting into two parts. There is what we call the pro-Israel community. And I would say that out of 14 million Jews in the world, I would say it's about 10% of Jewry. No, that's wrong, because Israel, I stated that wrong. There's 14 million Jews in the world. 8 million live outside of Israel, 6 million. So let's take the 8 million outside of Israel. Well, actually, now they're saying it's about 50-50. But let's imagine 8 million. The 6 million who live in Israel are pro-Israel. They go to the IDF. Even if left-wing, right-wing, they love Israel. The 8 million who live outside, I would say 10% are what we call the pro-Israel community. We're lucky if it's 800,000, a million. We're lucky. The other 7 million are tragically assimilating into oblivion, or they agree with a lot of the critics. But they're not marching for Israel. And they're not, because when everyone says to me, listen, there's 400 million Arabs in the world, how are we supposed to compete? There's only 14 million. I always say to them, if we had 1 million Jews, part of the pro-Israel community, who were really, really fighting, we would win. That's all it takes. But we don't have that. In America, I would say we have 50, 60,000 Jews who are part of the pro-Israel community, who are part of the march. It's always, I see them. It's the same people. All the pro-Israel conferences, it's always the same people. Okay. Having said all of that, what did he say? We're good? Okay. Having said all of that, here's the reason for anti-Semitism. Not that there's a simple answer to such a complex and tragic question, but here's the reason given by the Talmud. And I'm not quoting it because the Talmud gives it. I'm quoting it because the Talmud gives it, and it's actually ingenious. Lama nikro shema Sinai, mishum shemisham yorda Sinai le'olam. Why did God give the Torah on Mount Sinai? Why does it have that name? Why didn't God give the Torah on Mount Everest, or Kilimanjaro, or some great peak? Because on that little mountain called Mount Sinai, it became the mountain of hatred. Hatred and anti-Semitism started on that mountain. Are you aware of the fact that Mount Sinai literally translates as the mountain of hatred? It's funny because in America, half of our hospitals have that name. And I always, like, I have a friend of mine who runs the whole Mount Sinai campus system, 11 campus, and I want to say, by the way, you do realize that you called all your hospitals Mountain of Hatred Hospital. You had a heart attack, God forbid, don't worry, come to the Mountain of Hatred. And we're going to treat you. Mount Sinai means the mountain of hatred. Because anti-Semitism, hatred to the Jewish people, starts at that mountain. And the reason? The world hates the Jews because we are the conscience of the world. The moment God gave the Torah to us and said, teach the world not to commit adultery, you think that all the adulterers were going to find you to be popular? Oh, I love that message. You should not be cheating on your wife. Thank you! I love you! Thank you for making me feel guilty. Thank you for ruining. I'm 60 years old, 70 years old, and I have a 30-year-old mistress. My wife doesn't, and I was enjoying it so much, and now you ruined it for me. I love you. All the people who are stealing, all the people who are murdering, we come to them and say, you know, you can't murder. You know, you can't steal. Did you think you were going to be popular promoting that message? Don't you know that nobody wants to have a conscience? You know what I learned going around Germany? There's two things that people love in Germany. One is beer, and the other is wine. And they both have one word in common. It's called alcohol. And Rieslings, best Rieslings in the world, right? It's supposed to come from Germany, along Rhineland.
Mosel.
Why do people love alcohol? Because it kills your conscience. You don't have to think about the moral nature of your actions. That's why people love drugs. Why do so many Hollywood celebrities engage in drugs? Why do so many of them die so young? Answer, because money and fame led to immoral choices where they became gods and they were treated like deities. And they were no longer faithful or no longer charitable or no longer kind. And they became, and they feel bad about it because they have a conscience. But if you take enough ketamine, you don't have a conscience. Take enough cocaine, take enough heroin, you don't have a conscience. When the Crusaders wanted to kill all the Muslims, for no real reason, the first thing they had to do was kill all the Jews in Germany. Because the Jews are the ones who said, thou shalt not murder. They hate us because we're good. And that's the sad thing about it. The better and more moral Israel is, the more Israel is hated. No country in history has ever fought a war under similar circumstances more humanely than the IDF is fighting this war in Gaza. I'm going to prove it to you. Even according to the Gaza Health Ministry, Israel has either a 1 to 1.5 civilian to combatant ratio, death ratio, or 1 to 2. What do I mean by that? Whenever you fight urban warfare, Iraq, Afghanistan, whenever you're fighting terrorists who are embedded with civilians, you're going to have civilian casualties, unfortunately, because they're all mixed together, right? So when America fought in Fallujah, for example, America had a 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 combatant to civilian death ratio. For every Al-Qaeda terrorist America killed in Fallujah, it killed about 4 civilians. Terrible, but what choice did it have? Today, thank God, Al-Qaeda is defeated because of those wars, but 4 civilians died for every soldier. When Churchill fought the Germans, this country, he didn't drop loaves of bread. He didn't bring in 2 million tons of humanitarian relief into Germany the way Israel has. You know what he brought? He brought hundreds of thousands of tons of incendiary bombs that wiped Hamburg off the face of the earth. It wiped Cologne off the face of the earth. It wiped Würzburg off the face of the earth. Dresden was the last month of the war. They sent 2,000 Lancaster bombers and killed 25,000 Germans in a single night. Harry Truman didn't drop humanitarian aid on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He dropped something called an atomic bomb. Israel could have ended this war in 24 hours, but it doesn't do anything that Churchill did, FDR, who were considered the 2 greatest. And by the way, I want you to understand, for those of you who say, well, it was different. That was 80 years ago. They didn't have precision bombing. That's garbage. The Americans had, for its time, the most precision bombing site available. It was called the Norden bomb site. And at least the Americans had, let's call it the decency, to only bomb during the day to strike at military and industrial targets here in Germany. Even then, so many civilians died. Okay? We don't know how many German civilians died. Minimum 700,000 and as many as 3 million German civilians were killed in the Second World War. But Churchill didn't even bomb during the day. He bombed only at night, with no northern bomb site. And when Churchill was asked, how can you do this and kill so many German children and babies? His answer was, I'm not going to risk one RAF pilot for one of those kids. Not one. We're going to bomb at night when they can't see us. Is Churchill considered Hitler today? Yeah, some are saying it because they wanted part of defaming the IDF. But most people regard Winston Churchill as the greatest statesman, maybe that ever lived, and certainly the greatest statesman of the modern era. And he just blew up cities right, left, and center. And here's the catch. The better we Jews act, the more they hate us, because the more we make them look bad. That's the reason for anti-Semitism. In other words, the more food we give, you'll see, the more they'll say we're starving them. I promise you. The more IDF soldiers die in hand-to-hand combat, 1,000 have died already, when really it should have been 50 if Israel used its air force, if that, the more they'll say that you're indiscriminately killing every Palestinian and engaged in genocide. Because if the reason for anti-Semitism is that we are the moral conscience of the world, chosen to be a moral conscience, I agree with you, Rabbi Tzimchava. We are chosen, but chosen for what? To be God's favorite? God doesn't play favorites. All of us are God's children. Whenever, I debate, I love my Christian brothers and sisters. I'm very close to the Christian community, the American Jewish Christian, and I'm close to the Vatican. Although they probably don't like me recently because I've been going against the canonization of Pope Pius XII, Hitler's Pope. That's been on, if you've watched that. Anyway, but I'm very close to my Christian brothers and sisters. But whenever they say to me, Shmuley, you're so close to the Christians and you know the New Testament and you speak in churches, why don't you just accept that Jesus was the Son of God? I said, well, of course he was the Son of God. I said, oh my God, really? You believe that? I said, absolutely. Of course Jesus was the Son of God. I said, oh my God, we're making progress. I said, as am I, as are you. We are all God's children. God doesn't play favorites. We're not chosen to be God's best child or most loved child. We're chosen by God to tell the rest of the world that they have God in them. That they have to act like they have God in them. That they can't be freaking monsters. Because Hamas has no God, not outside them and not inside them. They're animals. They have taken the image of God and erased it. They were born with the image of God. Yahya Sinwar, Yamach Shemo, was born with the image of God. And he erased it and became Hitler of his time. Adolf Hitler himself. I always ask my kids, Yamach Shemo, I always ask my kids a trick question. You're a babysitter, and you're babysitting Adolf Hitler. Do you kill him? Help me. Anyone? You're a babysitter in Braunau am Inn, or later they would move to Linz in Austria, and you're babysitting Hitler. Do you kill him? Anyone? Do you take a spike and put it through his head? You look for the 666 and you take a... Yeah, go ahead.
I would kill him.
You'd kill him?
Yeah.
That's what my kids say. Okay, go on. Anyone else?
I think so.
Sorry? You wouldn't kill him. Anyone else?
Like Esau,
Sorry?
like in the case of Esau, he was judged at that moment, the way he was at that moment. So when he was
Interesting.
a little baby, he was innocent.
In other words, if I can...
It's like what you said, that Hitler was born in the image.
I'm going to rephrase your answer if I may. It's a trick question. My kids don't like my answer, by the way. Let me just tell you that. A lot of people don't, but it's a trick question. He wasn't Hitler. When he was a little baby, he wasn't yet Hitler. It was when he became a killer and a monster. So to kill an innocent child, you're not even killing Hitler. He didn't have to become Hitler. He was never predestined to become Hitler. It wasn't written in the stars. There were no constellations. There was no horoscope saying that he would be Hitler. Yahya Sinwar could have been a Palestinian leader who took all the international aid that was given, triple the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Germany, that rebuilt England, that rebuilt Belgium, that rebuilt Holland, They rebuilt Scandinavia, American money that rebuilt Europe. The Palestinians got triple that per capita. He could have taken that money and built universities, could have built hospitals. Instead, he built an underground network of tunnels to kill Jews. That's why he's roasting in hell, hopefully. So if that's why we're hated, what do we do about it? Because the better, it's a catch-22. The better we behave, the more we're targeted. That's the problem. The more humane Israel is, the more it's condemned. The more humane Israel is, the more it's attacked. Let's remember, the whole reason October 7th happened, we don't know till today why the IDF failed for 6 hours. And I hate when we say the IDF failed. No, if the IDF failed, it would have been a Holocaust. The IDF failed for 6 hours. That is true. We have to figure out those 6 hours. But after that, the IDF has been magnificent. But those 6 hours were a failure, which is why we had a Holocaust-level massacre. But the whole reason it happened was that most of the people in Otef Gaza, most of the people in the Gaza envelope, the kibbutzim that surrounded Gaza, they were more left-wing politically. They really wanted to help the Palestinians in Gaza. They felt bad that their lives weren't better because of Hamas, the tyranny of Hamas, and the theft of Hamas. So they would try to give them jobs, knowing it was dangerous. And unfortunately, many of these people came, and they were terrorists, and they mapped exactly how to get into the kibbutzim, and that's why you had this massacre. So the better you behave, the more you get killed. So then what do we do about it? And here's the answer, here's the key. We forgot that part of being good is fighting and destroying evil. Judaism is the only religion in the world that believes in something called kosher hate. Kosher love and kosher hate. Let me demonstrate what I mean by that. Is all love good? That was, the beat. That was one of the mistakes of John Lennon. John Lennon was killed a few blocks from where we live. And there's a very moving place in Central Park called Strawberry Fields where 24/7 they play his songs. It's beautiful. Everyone takes pictures there. There's always someone with a... He stood for love, but his first wife, I think her name was Cynthia Lennon, he left her and his son Julian. They didn't have money to heat their apartment. He was the most famous star in the world, and he married Yoko Ono. I met Yoko Ono. She was honored in one of our... She's not a bad person, but okay. She shouldn't have... She probably should have waited till he was divorced. But the point is, John Lennon believed in all kinds of love. And you could fall in love with a woman that wasn't your wife, and then you could abandon your wife and is that kosher love? Is it? Is all love kosher? If a man falls in love with his mistress, is that kosher? No. So, loving your children, is that kosher? Yeah. Loving your mistress, not necessarily. So there's kosher love, and there's unkosher love. Now let's take it further. Loving Mother Teresa, is that kosher love? Yes. Loving the Dalai Lama, good people, is that love? I shared a stage with the Dalai Lama. He's a very special man, actually. He's a great man, sure. What about loving Hamas? Like all of these Free Palestine neo-Nazi idiots. Is that kosher love? No, that's not kosher love. So, even when it comes to love, there's kosher love and non-kosher love. Why would you think it's any different when it comes to hate? Not all hate is bad. There's kosher hate, and there's non-kosher hate. I'll give you an example of non-kosher hate. Hating the Hamas terrorist who put a shoelace around the neck of Yarden Bibas. Sorry, what was the baby's name? Forgive me. It wasn't Yarden, that's the father.
Theo.
What?
Theo.
Theo Bibas. Who hated that little baby, who never hurt him, little baby, and strangled him to death. He hated that baby. Is that kosher hate or non-kosher hate? That's not kosher hate. The terrorists of Hamas who took, I didn't know her, but now we're very close to her parents. German girl, German Israeli. The first woman who was publicly violated and desecrated. So, Shani Luke, whose parents, Ricarda, she's the one, German convert to Judaism, amazing woman, born here in Germany. And her father, Nissim Luke. They're two of our dearest friends till today. The terrorists who took that woman, stripped her naked, and put her in her underwear and shot her in the back of her head so that all of her hair was matted with blood red, matted with blood, was that they hated her. Was that kosher hate or non-kosher hate? Obviously non-kosher hate. But what about my hatred of Nazis? I freaking hate Nazis. I hate Hitler. I know a lot about Hitler. My wife thinks I know too much about him. I've tried to watch every documentary ever made about him. I've tried to read every biography, and there's like 5,000 of them, so I didn't read 5,000, but I know a lot about Hitler's life. I've gone to all the major places where his speeches were given, etc., because I want to try to understand the nature of evil, if it is understandable at all. I hate Hitler. Is that kosher or is that non-kosher?
Kosher.
It is kosher.
How is it that we made hatred something bad? It all depends on the object of your hatred. If you don't hate Hamas, you won't fight Hamas. And if you don't fight Hamas, they will starve every Palestinian child, stealing every morsel of bread. And even if Israel ends the war tomorrow through some negotiation to release the hostages, Hamas will once again tyrannize every Palestinian in Gaza, steal all their money, steal all their food, even if the IDF clears out tomorrow. And they will shoot anyone who opposes their political regime. They'll shoot them in the head as they've done for 20 years. They were supposed to be in power for 4 years, elected in 2006. Mahmoud Abbas was supposed to be elected for 4 years. He's in his 26th year of 4 years. Do you know what Abraham Lincoln, America's greatest president, said about slavery? He said, I hate the institution of slavery. Do you know what Winston Churchill said about Hitler? He said, there is only one man on earth that I hate, and his name is Adolf Hitler. Hate. We forgot that we could be good people and still hate and fight back. Only the evil, the wicked. I don't hate Palestinians, they're my brothers. I don't hate Muslims, they're my brothers. I mourn and lament every Palestinian child who is dying in this war. Let's say the Hamas numbers are right. I don't know, 30,000, 10,000. If it was 5, that was 5 too many. They've all died because of Hamas, and I hate Hamas for killing Palestinian children. And unless we hate them and fight them, and by the way, the same thing applies with all these free Hamas idiots. How is it that we allow all this garbage? I'm not saying there shouldn't be freedom of speech. There should be freedom of speech. But how is it that we never counter-protest? How is it that we take our yarmulkes off and our tzitzis off, and we're so freaking afraid? You know, the one thing a Chabad Shliach has no choice. He has no choice. He can't hide his Judaism. You know, I'm very close to the black community. The black community says to me, there's a very big difference between anti-Semitism and racism. You Jews can hide, and damn are we good at it. Until we weren't good at it, because Hitler found us no matter where we were. But otherwise, we try to hide. But a black man can't hide the color of his skin. And a Chabad rabbi can't hide his beard. And you can't hide your black hat, and you can't hide your kapata. And that's the way the Rebbe wanted it. Forced into being Jewish. Forced into being visibly Jewish. Forced into being identifiably Jewish. While all of us hide and hide and hide. We have become the Illuminati. How do you fight anti-Semitism? Through ferocious pride. Through hating and fighting evil like the IDF. The IDF are the greatest force for good in the history of the Jewish people. Because they are destroying the monsters who take life. And for those of you who are not proud of the IDF, who question them, the world got to you, man. They got to you. That moral fog of not knowing the difference between right and wrong, not knowing that hatred could be kosher, because the IDF kills these monsters, and only if Hamas is eradicated and destroyed and annihilated, because they've erased the image of God, will there ever be peace in the Middle East, and will Palestinians have a measure of dignity. And you want me to prove it? It's very easy. Name one Arab government that openly supports Hamas besides Iran. Just name one. Did the United Arab Emirates support Hamas? They freaking hate Hamas. Does Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia love Hamas? Support? He hates Hamas. Yeah, he'll go through the motions. He hates Hamas. Jordan, do they love? They hate Hamas. Egypt, they hate Hamas. Lebanon is trying to kick out Hezbollah now. Why? Because they all hate the Muslim Brotherhood. Because they know this is the destruction of the Arab world. They all know it. There's only one country that loves Hamas. And they are the most evil government on earth. And they're called Iran. And you know how evil they are? They will kill you if you show a strand of hair and you're a woman. They will kill you for showing your hair. I want to repeat that. They will kill you, torture you, and murder you if you show your frickin' hair. And the world allows them to sit at the UN like it'll allow them in 10 days' time at the UNGA, because this world has no morality. They will kill you for being gay. They will string you up in the town square and kill you because you're a man who's attracted to other men. Now, whether that's your thing or not, you kill someone for that? Are you freaking sick in your head? Are you like, what kind of monster are you? What kind of animal? And you know, as I watch Europe slowly commit suicide and allowing all these Islamists to take over all their nations, not Muslims. Muslims should be granted refugee status like Jews during the Holocaust when they were living in barbarous conditions, absolutely. But they should be given a simple test in the same way Jews, everyone should be. Before you allow a Muslim or a Jew or an Israeli, check their social media. If their whole social media is, I hate women, I want to shoot women, I hate women in bikinis, don't let them in your country. Whether they're from Beersheba or whether they're from Baghdad. If their social media is, I want to kill every lesbian I meet, I don't think you should let them into your country. If their social media is, I want to see, if their social media is, I come from Bnei Brak, and I want to institute a halachic regime in Germany where Jews control everything, and Shabbat has to be observed, I would say, you know what? Stay in Israel. That's probably more your thing. Why is it different with someone who comes from Syria who wants to impose Sharia law in Germany? Why would you be crazy enough to commit frickin' suicide of Western liberties, Western freedoms? You gotta be nuts! Because there's no kosher hate. I hate people who brutalize women. I hate men who brutalize women. I hate men who will kill a teenager because he's gay. I hate them, and I will stop them. You don't want to go to Tel Aviv's Great Pride Parade? You're from, it's a sin in the Torah? Don't go. You want to write something saying you disagree with it? It's a free country. You want to go and stab one of them? We're going to put you in jail forever in Israel. Germany is committing moral suicide. Holland is committing moral suicide. England's committing moral suicide. Not because they're allowing Muslims in, God forbid. It's because they're allowing Islamists in. They're allowing Western haters to come into their countries. And you see it everywhere. All of these Free Palestine people who are marching, they hate the countries they live in. They hate them as much as Israel. They just can't say it. And once they finish Israel, Germany's next. And Holland is next. And Belgium is next. And whoever doesn't want to say it or admit it, come on, you're just being absurd. I want to see Islam flourish in the West. I want to see beautiful mosques. I love seeing Muslims at prayer. I love seeing people wearing crosses. I love seeing women who wear, by their own choice, a head covering. Orthodox Jewish women wear the same head covering. We wear tichels. We wear shaitels. But to do it at gunpoint, we beat anti-Semitism by ceasing to believe that the good man is a sucker, that the good man is a weakling, that the good man lies his life down to die, which allows me to answer one final question. I believe that the 6 million Jews of the Holocaust were the holiest, bravest Jews that ever lived. I always tell my wife that after 120 years, when I go up to heaven, I hope Mashiach will come, God willing. But if Mashiach's not here, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, who do I want to meet first? Avram, Isaac, Jacob, my namesake. My name is Jacob Samuel. So I want to meet the prophet Samuel. King David, that would be pretty cool. Mordechai Nalevich, who led the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, my hero. The Rebbe, to see my Rebbe again. But you know who I'd want to meet first? I want to meet every one of the 6 million. I want to hear each and every story. I want to know what happened to them before they were silenced, before Zyklon B gas entered their lungs, before they were lined up at a lime pit at Babi Yar. I want to meet every one of the 6 million. I want to know their story. They were the bravest, most beautiful Jews that ever lived. So why didn't more of them fight back? Why didn't they create an IDF back then? I mean, some of the answers are pretty straightforward. The Jews were basically taken hostage because the Germans came to you, took your kids, and said, we can take your kids alone, you can come. And all the propaganda and all that horrible stuff. But I'll tell you the main reason, I think. And it's not true, God forbid, it's a slander to say that they walked like sheep to the slaughter. That is disgusting. That is a libel. I'll tell you what it was. Before Israel, we defined bravery as being brave enough to die for our Judaism. It takes great bravery to die for your religion. And they were the bravest amongst us. And after the creation of Israel, we've now learned it might just take even greater bravery to live for your Judaism. And that's what the anti-Semites are telling us. After October 7th, we had so much sympathy for you. You were so good. You were killed, you were raped, you were murdered, you were beheaded. We felt so sorry for you. We were going to make movies about you, like Schindler's List. We were going to make incredible movies like Sophie's Choice. Movies about October 7th. Why couldn't you just die and we'd love you like we love the 6 million? And for a lot of people, a lot of dumb Jews who buy that argument, who are now criticizing Israel, we lost the sympathy of the world. We could have been in our graves and we would have had the sympathy of the world. It is much harder to live as a Jew. It's a much braver stance to have to navigate all of these moral choices and be hated and still live knowing that you're right, that you're brave, that you're righteous, that you're not a killer, that you don't starve children, that it's crap, that it's a libel. In other words, my friends, it's this simple. We fight anti-Semitism by being the proudest, strongest Jews we possibly can. We fight anti-Semitism by coming to shul on Shabbat and hearing the Parshat HaShavua. Last week, Parshat Shoftim, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Pursue justice, always. To get that weekly inspiration from our Torah, you have to come to shul once a week. You have to. How could you go a week without being exposed to the Torah? You should study on your own every day, but at least once a week you got to hear it from the actual scroll that was written with such holiness. How could you fight anti-Semitism if you don't light Shabbos candles and bring greater light to the world? How could you fight anti-Semitism if you don't have a strong marriage, if you don't go to mikvah and don't have greater passion in your marriage, and you're fighting so weak, you're in a unloving marriage, unloving relationship, your family's falling apart? How are you going to be strong to fight the people who hate your guts? How are you going to be strong if your spiritual constitution is undermined by food that isn't kosher? And what do I mean by kosher food? How does that make us strong? Because it's a rigid, it's rules that we keep wherever we go and identify as Jews, and we meet other people. Because I go travel and I have to go to a kosher restaurant, I meet Jews that I would never have met otherwise. That's how you become a community. So you know that the leader of conservative Judaism in America said a few years ago, he said he finally wants to admit that one of the biggest mistakes, remember there's reform, which is really struggling right now, sadly, just to survive. And not enough of our Reform brothers and sisters publicly support Israel. We need more. Then you have Orthodox, halacha. And then you have conservative, somewhere in the middle. Now, conservative officially says the whole prayer book. They don't have a mechitza. They don't separate men and women. But officially, conservative is a halachic Judaism, officially. But they made a rule that you could drive on Shabbat. Do you know that the head of conservative Judaism said about 10 years ago at their annual conference, the biggest mistake conservative Judaism ever did was allow people to drive on Shabbat? Not because it violates the sanctity of the Sabbath. He said, you know why? Because we destroy the idea of a community. If you have to walk to shul, then you live close to Jewish neighbors. But now that we gave everybody a car, we're so spread out. He said, look at the Orthodox, look how closely knit they are, because they have to live within walking distance. Their kids play together Shabbat afternoon, etc. We lost that. That's what kosher food is. You go to the kosher butcher, and you're constantly meeting other Jews. How can we be strong without these structures that give us strength? So, when you said to me, what's your name, please? Rachel. And you said to me very beautifully that we are one community. We're not naturally one community. We may feel sorry for each other when you hear that terrible things happen like October. It doesn't. What makes us one community is when we keep the same Judaism together and forces us to come together at synagogue, at a kosher restaurant, Israel, at a Jewish concert. But if you don't have that structure, you assimilate into oblivion. You disappear. And I'll tell you one final thing. The three greatest tragedies of the Jewish people in their history were, number one, destruction of the first and second temple, especially the second temple by the Romans. That was number one. 1 million Jews were killed by the Romans. By the way, not really out of anti-Semitism. The Romans didn't hate us as Jews. They hated us as rebels who threw off their yoke. We didn't submit. It wasn't really anti-Semitism. It's very interesting when you think about that. But the first cataclysm, they killed 1 out of 2 Jews, was Churban Bayit Sheni, okay? Under Titus, Vespasian, and then Hadrian, 70 years later. Okay, that was one. What was number 2? Number 3 is easy. It's the Holocaust, right? Sadly. But what's the middle one? What's the second greatest calamity? The first destruction of the temple. The third is the Holocaust. What's in the middle? Spanish Inquisition. Spanish expulsion. Now, notice that in the Spanish Inquisition, they didn't cast all the Jews. And they didn't kill all the Jews. They just kicked them out. So where are they today? So many of those Jews actually just hid their Jewishness. They were actually Marranos. They actually kept Catholicism openly, but kept Judaism secretly. So where are they today? Why does Spain only have 6,000 Jews? Spain should have 50 million Jews. 500 years later? Because a hidden Jew is an extinct Jew. If you hide long enough, you forget who you are. So if you hide in Germany, no Magen David, no tzitzis, no yarmulke, no coming to shul, no this, and if you hide long enough, you may survive. Your children won't. They will disappear. That's why there's no Spanish Jews left. When they became Moranos, which means pig, by the way, in Spanish, they disappeared, and we can't disappear. And that's why I'm going to close the way I started. Thank you, Rabbi Gittler, for the open, visible Judaism and Jewishness that you portray here in a country that has the worst history for the Jewish people of any country we have ever inhabited, ever. I'm sorry to say it, but Germany today actually is a lot better than most European countries. Germany's not recognizing a Palestinian state, for example. But sadly, our history in this country is barbaric, brutal, unbelievably horrible, beyond anything that even I could understand even before this trip. And I know a lot about the Holocaust. And it's time for Germany now to stand with the Jewish people. You know, I say to myself, so Angela Merkel felt really bad about the Holocaust. And I believe that she did. And she said, you know, before I leave the chancellorship, she's probably one of the 2 or 3 most consequential chancellors, you know, in modern German history since like Willy Brandt. So she said, before I leave, I'm going to bring in, I want to do something big. I want to show how humane the Germans are. We're not monsters. We have the Holocaust that will stain us for 1,000 years, but we're people. So she brings in 1 million refugees from Syria to live in Germany. Now, again, my Muslim brothers and sisters who are really facing persecution, they should be allowed into Germany the way we Jews were not allowed into other countries. God bless them. But the fact that not a single simple interview was done, one by one, just saying, what do you think about the Jewish community in Germany? What do you think about Sharia law in Germany? What do you think about Christianity? What do you think about LGBTQ rights? We're not saying for you, just in general. What do you think about women's rights? What do you think about... The fact that a simple interview wasn't done, why not? Now you end up punishing the Jews. You wanted to show how humane you are. You bring in a population, and I'm not saying, God forbid, a million, but even if it's 10%, even if it's 100,000 who are now marching all over Germany, intimidating Jews into silence, making the shuls more empty, making Jews more afraid. What the hell is that? It doesn't even make sense. I believe in Western values. I believe in Western freedoms. I absolutely do. I want Israel to remain a democracy. We have to pressure the German government to have police outside this Chabad house all the time. We have to pressure the German government. Yes, they wanted free Palestine, fine, but no incendiary comments about Israel and Jews. Free Palestine. But the moment they say from the river to the sea, they should be instantly arrested. That is a call for genocide. That is a call for a Holocaust. Free speech, yes. Hate speech, no. Thank you very much. Okay. That was part one. We're gonna take a 10-minute break, and the second of part. So we have 11 parts tonight. And
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Appreciate it.
what's interesting? Okay. Let me take it. Sorry.
Any questions?